You are standing at the base of a mountain in the middle of January, and you think you just paid $249 for a day of skiing. You didn't. Above you right now, a fleet of snow guns the size of jet engines has been running through the night, burning enough electricity to power a small town, just so the run beneath your skis exists at all. A grooming crew carved 400 acres of corduroy before the sun came up, and a company headquartered 1,000 miles away, one that owns ski resorts across 15 states and 3 countries, already calculated almost to the dollar how much you were going to spend the second you walked through that gate. You think the mountain sold you snow. It didn't. By the time this video ends, you'll understand why the snow falling from the sky might be the least important ingredient in the entire business. Here's the turn. The mountain was never selling you a day outdoors. It was selling you certainty. And somewhere along the way, it found a way to make you the one holding all the risk instead. Because a ski resort isn't one business, it's at least 5 wearing the same parka. There's the real estate Trojan horse, a resort built by land developers purely to make the empty mountainside next to it worth 10 times more, where the skiing operation is allowed to lose money every year because it was never the point. There's the corporate consolidator, publicly traded giants that own dozens of mountains at once, spreading risk across an entire portfolio, so a brutal snow year in Vermont gets quietly absorbed by a great one in Utah. There's the independent local hill, a family-run operation with 3 lifts and a rope tow, fighting for survival against companies 1,000 times its size. There's the community co-op, sometimes owned by the town itself, built to keep skiing affordable for locals instead of maximizing a shareholder's return. And then there's the ultra-luxury destination, where the lift ticket is almost an afterthought, because the real customer isn't a skier at all. It's someone buying an $11 million ski-in, ski-out chalet, and the mountain is simply the amenity that justifies the price tag. Same mountain, 5 completely different businesses. So what are you actually buying when you tap your pass at the gate? Not a mountain. You're buying access to a machine most people never think about. Snowmaking systems that can cost more to run in a single bad winter than an entire small resort is worth. A grooming fleet of snowcats, each one running close to $400,000, working through the night so the surface looks flawless by 8 in the morning. Ski patrol teams trained in avalanche control, using actual explosives to trigger slides before they can happen on their own. Lift mechanics performing engineering inspections on machines hauling thousands of people an hour up a mountain on a steel cable. Liability insurance policies large enough to rival what a hospital carries. All of it is baked into your ticket before you've made a single turn. But none of it, not one piece, is where this business actually makes its money. That part comes later, and it will change the way you look at every ski trip you've ever taken. Let's talk about what it costs to even open the gate. A single high-speed detachable chairlift, the kind that whisks you up in about 6 minutes, runs somewhere around $5 million to design, manufacture, and install, and that's before a single run underneath it exists. A gondola can cost 2 to 3 times that. Snowmaking coverage for a mid-sized mountain, including the pipes, the pump houses, and hundreds of individual snow guns, can swallow $20 to $30 million in infrastructure alone. And it's an expense the resort has to make whether nature cooperates or not. It's insurance dressed up as machinery. Add grooming equipment, base lodges, parking, water rights, and the permit fees paid to whatever government owns the land underneath you, and a mid-sized American resort can represent north of $100 million in sunk capital before a single lift ticket is ever scanned. That's not a small business. That's closer to owning an airline that only flies 4 months a year. And by the time that airline reopens each winter, a single walk-up ticket at a marquee resort can push past $250, the price of about 35 $7 coffees, spent in one day on one mountain. So who actually owns all of this? Follow it upstream and the picture gets stranger. A huge share of ski terrain in the United States doesn't even sit on private land. It sits on land leased by the federal government, which means the operator pays a percentage of its revenue back to the Forest Service just for the right to run lifts there at all. Above that sits the operating company, and above that, increasingly, sits a public corporation trading on a stock exchange, answering to shareholders who have never seen the mountain and don't particularly care about snowpack. They care about quarterly earnings. 2 companies alone now control a huge share of North America's most visited resorts, And they got there the same way private equity rolls up laundromats or veterinary clinics. Buy the independent mountains one at a time, fold them into a single all-mountain pass, and suddenly a skier in New Hampshire is paying a company headquartered in Colorado for a lift ticket in Utah. The mountain didn't get bigger. The ownership just got further away from the snow. Here's the reveal. The real product was never the lift ticket. It's the pass, sold 4, 5, sometimes 6 months before the first snowflake ever falls. Every spring, Vail Resorts and Alterra Mountain Company, the two operators behind the Epic Pass and the Icon Pass, put their all-mountain passes on sale for a fraction of what a walk-up ticket will cost by January. A pass running around $900 in April can be worth 2, 3, sometimes 4 single-day tickets by peak season. That's not generosity. That's a company locking in your cash in April, months before it has to spend $1 running a single lift, insulating itself completely from the one thing it can't control, whether it actually snows. Call it the snow transfer, the exact moment the entire weather risk of the business quietly moves off the company's balance sheet and onto yours. It's priced like prepaying an entire winter of $7 coffees in one shot, back when the weather was still a rumor. Cheap per cup, easy to forget you're paying for it, and the company gets your money whether you ever walk in for a refill. But owning the machine comes with its own nightmares. The biggest one is written into the climate itself. Winters are getting shorter and less predictable across huge parts of North America and the Alps, which means the tens of millions spent on snowmaking aren't a luxury anymore, they're survival, and that number keeps climbing every year. Then there's the cost structure that never bends. A chairlift doesn't know if it's empty. It costs almost the same to run for 5 skiers as it does for 5,000, which means one slow week doesn't just hurt profit, it can erase it, because so much of the expense is fixed no matter who shows up. There's a housing crisis hiding in plain sight too. The same real estate boom that makes the resort's surrounding land so valuable also prices out the lift operators, instructors, and patrollers who are supposed to run the place, forcing resorts into the strange position of subsidizing their own employees' housing just to keep enough bodies on the mountain. And there's liability. Skiing is one of the few recreational activities where a serious injury is a statistical certainty every single season, which makes rising insurance premiums a permanent cost of doing business, no different than fuel is for an airline. So what's the one variable that separates a resort worth billions from one that's quietly for sale? It isn't the snow totals, it's proximity. A mountain 90 minutes from a major international airport feeding off a metro population of millions who can book a direct flight and be on the slopes by lunchtime operates in a completely different economic universe than a beautiful mountain 3 hours from the nearest airport with no direct flights at all. Distance from a wealthy population is worth more than an extra 40 inches of annual snowfall, because a resort can manufacture snow with pipes and compressors. It cannot manufacture proximity to Denver or Salt Lake City or a direct flight out of New York. Snow you can fake. Location you can't. The single most valuable thing a mountain owns often isn't on the mountain at all. It's the 3-hour radius around it and everyone with money inside that radius. Picture a mid-sized resort selling that $900 season pass in April. A local skier who visits 15 times that winter is effectively paying $60 a day, cheaper than a round of golf, cheaper than most concerts, barely more than a nice dinner out. Now zoom out. That same resort sold 80,000 of those passes before Thanksgiving, which means it had already banked $72 million in guaranteed revenue before a single snow gun turned on. Whether that winter delivers 300 inches of powder or a disappointing brown, rocky December, that $72 million already exists. It's already been counted, already reported to shareholders, already spent on next year's chairlift. You didn't buy a season of skiing back in April. You sold the company an insurance policy against its own weather, priced exactly like a coffee you pay for once and quietly forget about all winter long. The snow was never the product. Your certainty was. And somewhere along the way, the mountain figured out how to sell it back to you, disguised as a bargain.